it's something that came out of the U.S. Government attempt to to prosecute, those individuals who dare to challenge the U.S. government. One time it was against the law, to advocate revolution. Just like we talks about every day on our show and in the community. We advocate, getting free or dying trying. Well, one time it was against the law. And, for a long time, for individuals there to even much, talk about it, you couldn't form an organization like the Black Panther Party or the likes, that advocated armed struggle, advocated, getting free. They just put you in prison, and there's a there's a lot of evidence to show that over the years, up until around mid-50s, this is what they were doing here in the U.S. government. There wasn't no freedom of speech, even though that was the Constitution. It was just against the law. And as a result of, during that time, they were targeting the Communist Party, Socialist Party, and the likes. But after, that was pretty much exposed, and then the U.S. courts, they ruled it as being illegal. And then what happened, under the FBI, they went underground, and they began, to, in a sense, disrupt, discredit, and destroy, those individuals and organizations that dare to continue doing the same. You can see, one time it was against the law, and once that was made clear, the U.S. government, in the form of the FBI, decided to go underground. And when they went underground, then they formed this Cointelpro organization. And again, they continue the same thing, doing basically the same thing. But as I said, initially they were jailing you. You do the stuff that we're doing now. And so anyhow, their focus was, and that's why I want to talk about the focus, just, just trying to make sense out of what they said, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the way I see it is, when they said, I said, one was to prevent a black coalition. And we see that, and it's something that we have to struggle against every day in our community, like today. This was in the early, in the early 70s, early, mid-60s, early 70s. This was on the agenda, according to, all the evidence, J. Edgar Hoover and the likes, but they were like, hey, prevent, a coalition of black groups, so we let's think about that. That was their objective. 2 was to, a national figure, a national leader. When folks think about, even today, when brothers and sisters in our community think about, the struggle, they think about a national leader. They think about the likes of Malcolm X, Dr. King, Kwame Ture, former H. Brown, Harry P. Newton, Bobby Seale, and the likes. Again, but remember now, that second thing on their agenda was to prevent a national credible leader. 3, to prevent armed struggle. They say, and they 3, they said prevent the violence like militant groups. But brothers and sisters, they were talking about prevent, armed struggle, and that is the right to oppressed nation people. That is a right in accord to the UN Charter, that the people, oppressed people, have the right in themselves against the intrusion of government, violent intrusion. So, but they say, prevent violence, when they put it in that perspective, they make you the criminal and them the victim. The other thing is to prevent, the rise of a black national organization, a credible organization. Again, we seen that, you know, with pretty much the suppression of the Black Panther Party, an organization, you know, again, you know, that had a whole lot to bring the whole of our community together, not just, you know, those in the brothers and sisters who were, you know, who started it, those in the region where it was started in Oakland, California, but you know, was able to, you know, branch out throughout the United States of America and throughout the world. But they were trying to prevent this particular organization. And the last thing, fifth, is to prevent, you know, the youth catching on. Remember the Black Panther Party, and you remember just the movement in general, you know, Black liberation movement in general was pretty much something that was, in a sense, organized by young people. So when you see, you know, footage of this, you see young people, as Comrade Nat was saying, you know, Chairman Fred, 21 at the time of his assassination by the U.S. government, FBI, but he began, you know, as a member of the NAACP. And a whole lot of these, you know, look at former H. Ralph Brown, Jamel El-Amin, you know, young brother, Harry P. Newton, they were young people, you know, and that's what the U.S. government had been doing. And we look today, and we don't see, you know, a credible, and it's not by coincidence. It's because it's a part of a conspiracy, an elaborate, protracted effort to, in a sense, to do everything they do. And so, even though Cointelpro is supposed to have been dead in 1970, you know, it is still alive. And it's our responsibility to begin to, you know, expose this and dare to organize if we're going to dare to get free.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up about H. Rap Brown. H. Rap Brown was a dynamite brother. And he could, you know, the reason why they called him H. Rap Brown, because, you know, he could, you know, like rap, you know, he could, like, you know, play the dozen with you and stuff like that. And, you know, he go off on these things and just, like, you know, really get down. A lot of rap artists, they have no history. They don't realize, you know, that this brother was called H. Rap Brown. You know, he had a rap where he can rap, you know, stuff like that. But and I say all that to say this because, like you were saying, you know, the Cointelpro, you know, operation, you know, supposedly, you know, was dead, and it was investigated by the church committee in 75, 76, and they come to the conclusion that they were guilty, whether it's the committee or not. You know, all of them, you're guilty. They told you in their own way that they were guilty. You see, now what comes to mind is like the Tupac. You know, if you look at Tupac, the type of influence that this young African had, you know, on the streets, and it's similar to what Chairman Fred Hampton Sr., you know, when he was operating back in the late 60s, you know, the influence that he had with the streets. You know, he could make connections with things, identify, you know what I'm saying, locate and identify, you know, the problems and stuff like that in the communities. Tupac understood the same thing. He learned, you know, he come up, you know, influenced, you know, by Black Panther, members of the Black Panther, people who were, you know, affiliated with the Black Panther Party. You see, his mother, Afeni Shakur, you know, with the Black Panther Party, himself becoming a political prisoner. But, you know, so Tupac, you know, incorporated that in his music. But what you always saw was Tupac in trouble with the so-called law. You see, that's why I call it the so-called law. So whatever that's all you saw was like trouble with the so-called law. But they never showed you this other side of Tupac. They never gave you this side of Tupac, the side of Tupac that, you know, like I said, that had a similar, you know, thing, you know, to being able to connect with the youth on the street and identify their problems, and he was able to express their anger, their frustrations, and pain through his music. You see, but there's a whole lot of things about Tupac that people, like I said, really don't understand. At one point, Tupac used to, you know, we used to get phone conversations, and Tupac, they would get recorded, you know, the phone conversation. And on one occasion, Tupac was speaking about how the industry, the music industry, was trying him to be, you know, the new nigga. You know, the new house nigga. But he had gotten to the point where he wasn't feeling it. He wasn't gonna be no new house nigga. Tupac had the idea, the designs of setting up a political party, and he's saying that out in his own words. you know, and I'll guarantee you in so many years, you know, we're going to have our own party, our own organization, our own nation. And this is what he was talking about. So the murder of Tupac, just not a murder of Tupac, the one that they give you the version, and then they try to create the impression, the idea of the Biggie Tupac thing.
Let me ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because again, you know, Tupac is no longer among the living, and I think it's something that we need to, you know, acknowledge it. And you know, and get on with. But what about the youth, you know, the black youth today? Because I'm saying we have a lot of young brothers and sisters that are trying to steps of Tupac or Biggie, and are being influenced by the same forces, you know, that the same money, same idea. And they're trying to, in a sense, prevent that rise. I mean, what you think about that?
And that's why I said that's good. It'll lead to the, you know, they'll take certain you know, hip-hop artists and prop them up, you know, and give the people this impression that, oh, this is where it's at. You see, just like you could take the rap group Dead Prez that a lot of people are not aware of, you know, who politically conscious, and they try to bring, you know, a lot of politicize you in their music. You see, so where they have to find some kind of way to control that and negate that. But like you said, if you take certain artists, and the game to divert it, and this will remind you of the Cointelpro operations, how they would take, you know, pit one group against the other group, like they would Black Panther Party and United Slaves call us under Karanga, under Ryan Karanga. You see, so it's a similarity, and you see, and then it's what you see now. And so this is just, you know, just to make the connections.
What about like political organizations? Because that's another thing is various political organizations. And I think it's about, you know, let's say prevent, you know, black coalition of groups. And I think about, you know, the success as relates to a lot of those groups, black group, former group that were targeted. Now they work with the government, like the Nation of Islam, you know. And it's sad to say that you have the Nation of Islam that with the pigs throughout the territory, you know, on the pretense of stopping violence in the community, you know. So I mean, you think they have been successful in that regard?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like you know, you hit the, you know, the nail on the head. So we're gonna have to get to this, you know, this conversation, because it's a loaded conversation, you know what I'm saying? But you know, once again, we just trying to come, you know, into your living room and, you know, politicize you, you know, get you, you know, to understand that, you know, we have to be able to think for ourselves and operate on our own, and be able to see these things and these contradictions within our community, to be able to get out, you know, get us on the right road, the right track to where we need to be at, because we're talking about liberation. You know, when I talk about integration, assimilation, you know, and being under the control, you know, of a so-called American democracy, which is, you know, which is a farce. You know, it's comedian. But, you know, last words, Conrad.
And talk about, you know, because I different want to, you know, put in perspective as it relates to New Orleans. You know, when we talk about the whole of the territory of diaspora. But, you know, New Orleans, what's happening, you know, because the regentrification piece, the land grab piece is big. You know, we got a thing where, you know, a lot of brothers and sisters can't find no job, but we got to look at more than just the Mexicans. We look at the Caucasians right now, right in the public food system, when they got more of them, you know, in big position than African people.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, we got to get back to this kind, right? Yeah. We say your whole rule, you know what I'm saying, straight up.
All right, Sister Krista, we love you, sister.
That deals with the needs and suffering of our people.